Hi there, I'm Amy and welcome back to another Animal Crossing inspired speed build in The Sims 4. Today we're building a Victorian inspired house for the character Gayle, who you can see on screen, and this was actually a request from RubyRB5538, so thank you so much for the amazing idea. It couldn't have been more well timed as well, considering the Lovestruck expansion pack recently came out, which contains a lot of heart-shaped assets, so it just seemed perfect for Gayle, and I was really excited to do this. In New Horizons, Gayle actually wears kind of a Victorian style dress, so I thought it would be fun to do a Victorian themed house as a result, and I found an interesting reference picture online, which I tried to recreate as well as I could here. Again, because there's a few limitations in The Sims 4, it took me a while to figure out the shape, so I do jump around a bit, and it's kind of a trust the process video, since a few things that I do at first might look a little bit weird, but I promise it comes together in the end, and I actually think it looks really cute. The Sims team actually did a little contest for building something with a heart-shaped pool as well, since we recently got the update to include round pools in The Sims 4, so I ended up entering that using this build. It just, again, seemed way too perfect given that Gayle has this little love heart on her forehead. Or is it her forehead? I think it's the top of her nose, technically. I'm not really sure what you call that part of an alligator. But it was just the perfect idea. So at the moment I am building this in Windenburg. I think it's a 20 by 20 lot, so it's quite small. I do end up moving it into Willow Creek. As you can see, there's not really a lot of space for a garden, so when I decided I'd add the heart-shaped pool in, it just didn't really fit here, so that does move a bit later on. But for now I'm just figuring out a few of the details. It might look a little bit weird again, like I said at the front, just because I had a reference picture that I was kind of following, but I think it works out in the end, even with that kind of half wall going across the top. And I found these assets from, I think it's Get Famous. They came in such the perfect pink colour, so I made sure to include those, and I really liked the detailing in the windows of them. They were really, again, quite Victorian styled. In addition to that, Strangerville came in quite handy because that has a lot of pink items. So you'll have seen that I added earlier a Strangerville door, and now I'm just including a few of the windows here. As you can see though, I did remove the Strangerville door in place of this one from Get Famous, just because I think it looked a lot nicer. It didn't have all of the black in the windows like the Strangerville one did, which I preferred since I wanted this to be really white and pink to go with Gayle's colour scheme. The house also ends up being a decent size. I only put one bedroom in it, and then there could be a second bedroom, but I end up decorating that as if your sim had the Love Guru career. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but the new career from the Lovestruck expansion pack. So I kind of made an office space with that in mind, so it's kind of usable in that sense as well if you wanted to play in this build and have that career for your sim. And this is available on the Sims 4 gallery just under my EAID, AWayfaringFrog, so you can download it from there if you wanted to play in it. I originally had a look at using a black roof to go with these Strangerville dormer items, but it just felt too stark, and again that's kind of the reason that I took out that Strangerville door earlier, because I didn't like the black on it, so I end up switching this out. And Get Famous again has some dormers, which I end up using in place of these. So I'm just pulling those out, and I think they look really cute. And again, they match along with the windows and the door that I ended up using really well, so I think they suited the build. Just trying to figure out some wallpapers to use now. I did end up using the siding in white from Growing Together, so I thought that was a good accent against the pink, so it wasn't completely pink. And then I originally tried this stone from the bowling pack, which I never actually realised came in pink, but I do end up swapping that out to, I can't remember, it might be from Vampires. There's sort of a more subtle pink brick, and I just think it looked nicer in the end, although I do really like this bowling pack one. So that will change a little later on. I also had a few issues with choosing columns, just because one of the Strangerville columns can't be extended all the way up a wall. It sort of has a cap to it, which is really frustrating. So I kind of played around a bit with those. I don't think I show it the entire time, so you don't have to go through that, but it really does frustrate me when they put a cap on the columns. I just wish you could raise them all to the same height. I don't really know exactly why they do that. But anyway, I ended up going with this, I think it's just a base game flooring. It's kind of like a herringbone styled stone to bring in the grey from the roof again, which I thought worked really well with the pale pink and white that I had going. And then the floor plan came together okay. I think the top floor was much easier to plan out, but then the bottom floor, I end up playing around with this a lot more when it comes to decorating. So at the moment I just thought it was going to be really open plan, which is why I didn't really put many walls down there, but it ends up being a bit more closed off than you can see now. And I end up adding a second bathroom down here. I also thought having a fireplace and then a chimney outside would look nice. Adds a bit more detail on the outside, and it's something else for your Sims to do. Plus in a Victorian build, I'm guessing it's quite common to have fireplaces. And I'm sorry about the fact that the camera moves around so much while I'm trying to place these windows, but I use the default wallpaper and kind of the notches on that wallpaper to work out what height to put them at. So that's why I keep flipping back to the inside of the build. So sorry if that's a bit much to watch. I was also really happy to be able to use these interior doors from the Strangerville pack. They're just such nice doors, and I don't think I've ever used the pink swatch before, so that was great to be able to include here. And you can see just a bit of placement furniture on the ground floor to map out where I'm going to put the different rooms, and it does already look very empty, so that's kind of why I end up putting in a few more walls later on. I think it looks a lot better when I come to decorate it. And this bump out at the back ends up being a dining room, and that will be the entryway to the back garden. So I think I should be moving the lot very shortly to be able to add in the pool. And of course it's heart-shaped. I had a lot of fun decorating the garden for this build as well, so I really hope that you like it. I put in so many flowers and it just looks really lush and like a nice place to hang out, so I'm sure Gayle would enjoy it if she was able to move into this house. So working on the back garden, I did cut a little bit of this out because it took me a few tries with the patio and just getting that to line up quite nicely, but I end up using again that same grey tile that I had at the front and the back of the build and just brought that throughout. It felt like a more structured build on this lot particularly made more sense than having kind of an overgrown space. And originally I did line all of the pavements with this base game fence, but I end up taking that out and I just kind of line it with terrain paint a bit later instead, so it doesn't look like it's painted onto flooring. I don't really like how tiles look on grass in this game, which is one of the reasons I like to line them with fences, but I think if you can get terrain paint against the edges of them, it works quite well. So I do end up doing that a bit later on. And then for the back of the build, just because it looked a bit bare, I ended up adding a lot of these trellis items in that run up the wall, which come from high school years. So I thought that was quite a nice feature, and I believe it's Parenthood where those pink flowers come from. I added those in just to break up some of the green and add a bit more of the pink in. For the landscaping as well, I did consider using the base game hydrangea bushes, but I remembered the Romantic Garden pack had a lot of really bright pink flowers and I thought they were just too perfect to not use here. So I included a few of those around, along with just some other base game bushes and flowers. Since this is now in Willow Creek, it made sense to use a lot of base game assets. And I did forget originally when I put this in Windenburg, but of course this felt again like the perfect place to have it since there's so many pink trees in the environment. So I made sure to add one of those blossom trees into the back garden. I did size it up a little bit. I didn't have Tool for this build, so I did just use the normal cheats for that. I discovered that Tool seems to be conflicting with the new Lovestruck expansion pack, at least from a gameplay perspective. I remember having some bugs, so I just took it out, which again makes me really sad because I enjoyed using it when I had it, so hopefully I'll be able to download it again soon. This fence as well that I've got on the build is actually from the For Rent pack. I've again never really used this fence, but it comes in a lot of really lovely pastel colours, so I was happy to be able to incorporate that here. We have a surprising number of pink fences in the game, but I thought this one matched the assets from Get Famous, so like the interior of the windows and things, a lot better than a few of the other ones, which is why I went for this For Rent one. And as I mentioned, just adding a bit of terrain paint to make the lot not look quite as weird when it's just sat on top of the grass, so it looks a bit more realistic, I think, including just some of the darker patches around the pavements. I think this would have been a much harder to build to do before fairly recently, because I feel like there haven't been many pale pastel pink swatches in the game until at least the pastel pop kit. Ever since then, I think the Sims team have definitely been adding more pastel colours into the game, which I really like. But before that, I think it was just hot pink items, which are really a choice. Quite fun to use in certain builds, but not really great for this kind of build. And speaking of great pastel colours, the Riviera Retreat kit had some really fantastic swatches again that suited this so well, so I made sure to use a lot of that here. I do really love that kit. I definitely recommend it if you were thinking of a nice outdoorsy kit to buy for decorating purposes. I just think it works really well for community lots and houses, so I like it. In this corner next to the top of the pool as well, I thought it would be kind of interesting to add something over there. So a bit shortly, I do end up including the new fountain from the Love Struck kit and just surrounding that with a few flowers and some landscaping. I think that went together really nicely. And again, using the Riviera Retreat kit wallpaper and flooring for the pool area just to bring a bit more pink into it. If you are enjoying the video, please do consider hitting that like button. It really does help the channel. And if you're enjoying these kinds of speed builds, I've got a lot of other Animal Crossing builds up on my YouTube channel. They're in a separate playlist, so you can easily access those. I think this is my first Animal Crossing speed build with my new microphone though, so if you did go back to have a look at some of my other videos, just be warned that the microphone isn't quite as good. So sorry about that, but I hope you enjoyed the speed build nonetheless. I have also built a few other non-Animal Crossing related builds, so again you can find those on my channel. And as always, if you have anything that you want to see that I haven't done already, even any Animal Crossing characters that you'd like to see me have a go at building for, just let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So now we're done with the landscaping and it's finally time to bring in one of the main items I wanted to use in this build, which is the new iconic heart bed. I went for this swatch in the end just because it's got the little hearts all over the cushions and the white part of the bed, and I just thought, again, why not just go crazy and bring in any heart related item that I can. So I made sure to do that here. I also, again, used this new wallpaper. I used it in my other Love Struck build, but I think this one's my favourite swatch, so I couldn't resist using it again. I do change it up a bit downstairs and use a different wallpaper entirely. I think that one was from the Maximalist kit, Decor to the Max kit. So it does change a bit downstairs, but I used this rose one throughout the upper floor. And then in this little tower nook area, I end up just putting sort of a little reading space, I suppose. I use that new Love Heart armchair in there and just put in, I think, a poof, so there's a place for another sim to sit if you wanted, otherwise a place to put your feet up. I did also struggle a bit with the curtains around here, just because on a really small octagonal room like this, I find it quite difficult to be able to place curtains, but there were some from the high school years pack which worked really well. They cover the entire window, but they have sort of a bit of a section that you can see through, so they're not solid. You can just see them in the background now. I didn't show adding those in just because I faffed around with it so much. It wasn't really something that was worth watching, but I do end up adding them in a few other places within the build as well. And I think the colour works really well. It brings in the darker parts of the wallpaper nicely, so I thought that was a good fit. And the rose that just flashed up on screen, which is a base game item, I had no idea that the new Love Struck expansion pack had new swatches available for that item. I was really confused for a bit, but I'm kind of glad they added some new ones in. Because it's a base game item, I kind of wish the new swatches were base game. It does feel like something they should have probably just included in the base game update rather than making that specific to Love Struck. I'm guessing part of it is because that's one of the date rewards in game, so they figured for the dating pack, why not add a few more swatches on this date reward item for that pack. But I think it's a shame that they've locked those behind an expansion pack, since they're swatches, which isn't that important a thing, but I think it's really nice to have those options, and it does feel like, given it's a base game item, just add them into base game. But oh well. So they are there if you do have the pack, but unfortunately you do need the pack to be able to access them. I also really enjoyed adding these plushies into this bedroom. One of them is from the limited time purchase. I can't remember when that expires, but if you buy Lovestruck within a certain time frame, I'm guessing it's still ongoing, but I'm not certain. But you do get a few items, and that heart plushie is one of them. The penguin does come as in the pack as normal. And then I added in this little bear, which is from base game. That just felt really suitable again for the space, and it helped bring in the darker pink and red from the wallpaper. And then outside on the balcony, I originally thought I might use this as a bit of an art space, but I end up switching this out for just a bonsai tree a bit later on. And up in the tower, I'll add a ladder to that later and then move the art space up there. So I think that makes a bit more sense for the space. I did actually do this last. I forgot entirely about that third floor, so I didn't bother decorating it until I'd finished the build, and then I looked again and thought, oh, there's a room that I just haven't done at all. So I did move the clip to be a bit earlier on, so it seems a bit like it makes more sense since it's part of the bedroom decorating, but I did do that quite late on. And here's those curtains again from high school years, which I think work really well on octagonal rooms. I really hate curtains that just completely cover up the window, so I think these are a good in-between because they work well on octagonal walls, but then you can still see outside. It's not completely blocking off all of the natural light, so I do really like that item. And now moving on to the bathroom. This is the only one out of the two in the house that I show. There is one downstairs as well, which you'll see a bit later, but I don't show furnishing it just because the video is quite long already, and it's pretty much just got the same assets. It only has a bath and, sorry, it only has a toilet and a sink though, rather than the bath or shower. But for this bathroom, and again the one downstairs, I really liked being able to use the Cozy Bistro flooring, since it's got the kind of pink accents that I was looking for, but also it's got that gold, which is incorporated in the Growing Together items, as well as that shelf unit from the Modern Luxe kit, and then again the curtains from there. But otherwise it's a fairly basic bathroom, just has everything your Sims will need. Moving on to the spare room, which you could change to another bedroom if you wanted, but I made this the office for that romance consultant career, which is new in the Lovestruck expansion. This was quite fun to do since I haven't made an office like this before, where I sort of envisioned clients coming over. Obviously that's not part of the gameplay, at least I don't believe it is. I haven't played with it myself, but I think it's just a rabbit hole career where your Sim will go off for a certain period during the day and then come back later on at night. But I did like the idea of Sims sort of coming over for their consulting sessions. So I made sure to include lots of areas for them to sit as they're discussing with the client. And that was the perfect excuse to use some more of the new items in the pack. So this lip sofa, which I haven't used yet. And again, it felt suitable for Gayle, who this house is inspired by, since she's sort of got that love heart theme going on. Not quite the same, but similar enough. So I enjoyed that. And this new little bookshelf item, which is one of the unlocks from the career alongside that sofa and then the heart chair. I really like that. I think it's cute. Just a small little clutter piece. Always welcoming new clutter pieces into the game, so I did enjoy that. And in this little nook by the door into the room, I really wanted to put just sort of a console table here, but we didn't get a too wide one with the new pack, so I ended up just pushing together the two single tile console tables, and I think they look okay together. So I thought that was quite a good piece to include, and it brought in again a lot of the red from throughout the other pieces of furniture in the room, so it wasn't all just pink. And again, this pack just feels like it really works well with the Modern Luxe kit. I love that bookshelf that we got with that kit, so I made sure to include that, and I just cluttered it up with a few other items. I think I actually grabbed some of the... here, so I brought in a few of the Crystal Creations items that you can create with your Sim. So I grabbed those off the gallery. You can't actually find them in debug, at least the ones that are there. I don't think are made with crystals, they're more just sort of the template version. And then I grabbed a few of the notes in bottles from Wedding Stories, just because it seemed like, again, a nice clutter piece. And I like the idea of maybe those being filled with love notes or something that the romance consultant was collecting and keeping on their shelf. And then just including a few of the LED items. I sort of mixed and matched the new Lovestruck ones with a couple from the high school years expansion pack. And then that's pretty much that room complete. Just moving on into the hallway, I did just grab a piece of one of the wallpapers that I intend to use downstairs a bit later, but otherwise this hallway is fairly simple. There's not a lot of space for too much furniture, so I just grabbed a couple of the new items, including this almost shell-shaped armchair and the new marble side table, which I really like. I think that side table would work really well for a small coffee table too. I think some of the time the coffee tables are just way too big, and if I want just a single tile one, there aren't too many options, so it's nice to have an additional one to be able to pick for that. And then this painting that I added in, again from the Lovestruck expansion pack, I enjoyed that piece just because it doesn't have a huge amount of pink in it, but Gayle's eyes are actually blue, so that just felt like a little nod to another aspect of her character. So I enjoyed that little detail, but it was nice to be able to use another one of the new art pieces. I do really like the artwork that came in that pack. After adding in just a few more clutter pieces to this hallway to make it look a little bit more lived in, I then popped downstairs into the kitchen area, where initially I thought I'd use these counters from Home Chef Hustle. I really like the colour of them, and just in general I think these counters are great, which is why I use them so often, but I was very aware that I used them in my last video, and because this is a Victorian style house and they're very modern, it did seem not quite right. So whilst a lot of this house is generally quite modern, I thought that's enough excuses to try something different. So I ended up going for the counters, one of the sets of the counters from the Dream Home Decorator kit, which I haven't been using as often as I expected, just mostly because, at least since Home Chef Hustle, I just use those all the time. And I think the wood swatches are kind of difficult to incorporate in all the spaces, since they're generally either a really pale wood or a really deep dark, almost orangey one. And then my favorite wood swatches come usually just in a green color as well for the counters. So as much as I love that, I don't want every single house to have that kind of color scheme for a kitchen. So I haven't been using them as much lately, but it was nice to bring them back into this build. And then in this little nook within the tower, I just added a games table here with a few chairs so that it was something else for your Sims to do. And I included that new hanging light. And then popping into the living room, I do jump back to the kitchen later to expand that slightly. And then I finish sort of decorating it. I hadn't quite added in the clutter pieces at this stage. But it's around when I start decorating the living room that I realise there's just a lot of open space and it could really do with being closed off in some way, which is what I end up doing in a bit. And I played around with a few rugs and sofas that I considered using. I really like the Dream Home Decorator rug, and the colours in it again suited really well. Here I was being I just wish that I had tulle at the time because I wanted to size it down, which is why I then made two of the same rug and put them together, thinking, maybe I'll download tulle later and then alter that. But I do end up actually moving that into the bay window space instead, and I put the new fluffy rug, which I've been using in pretty much every room of this build so far, and I put that under the sofa instead. And here I've now realised that it's probably best to close off some of this space, and again, for a Victorian house I think that makes more sense anyway. So this little centre room that doesn't have any windows, that ends up being the bathroom. I thought I cut some of this out, but it looks like I might have left some of me decorating that in. So as I mentioned, it's pretty much a copy and paste of the assets from the bathroom upstairs, which is why I keep flicking back from the top floor to this floor just to grab those items. But it just doesn't have a shower or a bathtub because I end up making it to be quite a small room, just so that there was a little bit more entry space for the Sims, which I do decorate in a bit as well. And I think the bottom floor just looks so much better now that it's been closed off, so I'm really glad that I made that decision. And jumping back into the living room to continue decorating that, I've now moved the Dream Home Decorator rug over. I'm just switching out the main rug to be, again, this one from Lovestruck, which is a new favourite of mine, I think. I really like the shape of it. It's quite a fun one that we don't really have anything of at the moment. And I just use fluffy rugs all the time, to be honest, so it's always great to have another option with different swatches. I also used a lot of the Modern Lux kit again in this room, so that frame TV, which looks just like a picture, if you're not aware that is actually a TV in the game, it will just look like that picture, or there's a couple of other swatches as well while it's not being used, which is a really cool item. I love that they added that into the game. And I do end up grabbing the bookshelf from that kit again and include it down here. In terms of activities for your Sims to do in this room, I added that new little card game onto the coffee table there, so your Sims would be able to play with that. Again, that's not a gameplay feature I've actually done myself, so I'm not sure what that's like. But otherwise, there's just the usual stereo, using again the Modern Lux kit, and then bookshelves around the room, so there's plenty for your Sims to do. And I think back before the Lovestruck assets were announced, I really wanted to use this pink wallpaper from the Decor to the Max kit after Ruby sent in the request to see a build for Gayle, so I'm really glad I managed to incorporate it here. And whilst I do think I prefer the newer one from the Lovestruck expansion pack, this one was a favourite before that, so it's nice to have something a bit different throughout the build so it's not the same wallpaper in every single room. I'm not going to lie, the wallpapers in the Decor to the Max kit are probably the main reason, if not the only reason I bought that kit. I use them quite often. I haven't used them in many of the speed builds on this channel so far, but in my own playthroughs before I decided to start doing YouTube, they're in quite a lot of my houses, so they'll probably start cropping up, if not the new wallpaper, more often than that, to be honest. And now just looking at the entryway, I used a few of the Dream Home Decorator items here just to create a bit of a space to hang up your coat as you come in, and then just adding a few more clutter pieces again before heading back into the kitchen to make the amendments that I mentioned earlier. So this just includes some of the clutter pieces, and then I thought it would be nice to have a few more appliances, so I added in the waffle maker from the Home Chef Hustle. I think I called it a kit earlier, but that is a stuff pack. Then I added a couple more counters in, just making that archway into the dining room slightly smaller so I could squish that in. I do add a coffee machine, which I think I ended up going for the one from the Cozy Bistro kit, as well as just incorporating a dishwasher, so it's a bit more usable for your Sims in that sense. And then moving on into the dining room, which is the last room that I decorate in this speed build, that ends up having the table from My Wedding Stories. I really liked the runner going across it, and the new picture from Lovestruck, the one with the two dancers in red, that ended up deciding the colour scheme, since as you can see I was originally going quite pink but ended up changing that to red. And I managed to include that new hippo item. I'm not sure if that's a Mexican thing and that's why it was added into the pack, but it seemed like a really odd item, but I quite enjoyed being able to include it here. And now we're coming to the end of the speed build portion of the video, so if you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and enable notifications so you'll know when I next upload a video. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the screenshots, and have a great rest of your day.